In this lesson, we'll take a look at 7 different pencil or graphite application techniques. A graphite pencil is normally what we reach for when we're first learning how to draw, but knowing how to use graphite to its fullest potential is important to your success. In this video, we're going to take a look at 7 different application techniques so that you can create the effects that you want in your own drawings. Let's dive in. We'll start by discussing hatching. Hatching is a method of developing tone and value in the illusion of form through the use of lines that do not intersect each other. You can clearly see here that the higher the concentration of lines, the darker the tone or the value. The more space left between lines, the lighter the value is perceived. When hatching is used, the form of the subject should be considered. Lines that are added should flow over the form of the subject. In this case, they curve slightly. These lines are called cross-contour lines, and when they're used, they add to the illusion of form. To make areas darker, like we are here in the area of core shadow, all we need to do is go back and add additional lines. The amount of space left between each line determines the overall tone or value. And in this case, we'll add a bit of cast shadow behind the sphere. Again, we'll use lines that do not cross over each other in order to create the illusion of the tone. The next method we'll discuss is called cross-hatching. Cross-hatching begins in the same manner as hatching. The only difference between hatching and cross-hatching is that with cross-hatching, the lines cross over each other. The more frequently these lines cross over each other, the darker the tone or the value. And just as we considered the cross-contour lines with hatching, we'll also consider the cross-contour lines with cross-hatching as well, following the form of the subject. And since we're drawing a sphere, the lines should curve slightly. There's quite a bit more flexibility when cross-hatching is used compared to hatching because you can always layer additional strokes over the top of the marks that you've already made. Because precise lines are required for both hatching and cross-hatching, it's advised to keep a sharp tip if either one of these approaches is chosen. And just like we did with hatching, we'll add a bit of cast shadow behind the sphere as well, but this time we're free to allow the marks to cross over each other. The next technique we'll discuss is definitely the quickest way to layer marks on a surface. This method is using scribbled lines or random lines. Basically, the premise is the same as using hatching and cross-hatching. The more frequently we have lines that cross over each other, the darker the value. But because we're working with graphite, we also have the added advantage of adjusting the amount of pressure placed on the pencil as well. Less pressure will result in logically a lighter mark, while heavier pressure will result in a darker one. This method is great for sketching or laying down visual information quickly. It can even be used to create a finished drawing. The next application technique is called stippling. Stippling is where countless small dots are added to the drawing surface. The higher the concentration of the dots, the darker the perceived value. The more space left between the dots, the lighter the perceived value. This method is definitely the most time-consuming approach, and in most circumstances, this approach is used for pen and ink applications instead of graphite applications. But as you can see here, if you use a graphite that's soft enough, like this 2B pencil, then you can produce some attractive results using stippling as well. The next graphite application technique is referred to as circling. Circling occurs when small circular strokes are made with the pencil, and the pressure applied to the pencil is controlled by the artist. This typically results in a smooth gradation of tone and value from dark to light. But don't let the name of this technique fool you or mislead you. You're not actually creating small circles with this approach. You're just rotating the pencil as you apply varying amounts of pressure in a circular motion. And depending on the position of your hand, these circular strokes may be circular or they may be more oval-like. For this approach, a duller pencil usually produces better quality results. If the pencil becomes too sharp, then lines may be evident as this technique is used. This technique, as I mentioned before, gives the artist a high level of control over the gradation of value, but it also allows the texture of the paper to play a role in the drawing, which may be something that you're looking for. The next technique is called blending, and blending starts the same way as circling does. Graphite is applied to the surface using varied amounts of pressure using circular controlled strokes. Once applied to the surface, the artist can then reach for a blending stump and start to work the graphite material into the tooth or texture of the paper. Here again, you can see that circular strokes are used here as well to control the amount of blending that occurs. The blending stump should be viewed as an additional mark-making tool, just as a pencil. The directional strokes that are made with the blending stump should mimic those that were made with the pencil originally. We use a blending stump here instead of our finger because a blending stump provides a sharper tip. Our fingers also release oils, and if these oils mix with the graphite, it can lead to an unattractive appearance in a drawing. Not to mention that the smudges that are created by the finger can be difficult to erase because of the oils that have been released. Therefore, it's a good idea when working with graphite to stick with using a blending tool such as a blending stump to blend the graphite. When blending is used as an application technique, we can go back and forth between graphite applications and using the blending stump until we arrive at a tone that is acceptable for the subject that we're drawing. An added advantage to using a blending stump to blend the applications is we can create softer edges. This is especially useful when creating the edges of shadows which are naturally blurred. The last graphite application technique we'll discuss is called rendering. Rendering is most often used as an application technique for charcoal, since charcoal is much easier to lift or remove from the surface than graphite. This doesn't mean that rendering can't be used for graphite applications, however. Rendering is focused on removing material from the surface, so an eraser is used to remove the areas of highlight or lighter value. This takes place, of course, after some graphite has been applied to the surface, whether by using a pencil or if powdered graphite applications have been applied with a brush. Of course, all of the lighter tones are removed using the eraser. And by adjusting the amount of pressure placed on the eraser, some of the midtones can be developed as well. Rendering is seldomly an erasing process on its own. Usually there are additive processes as well. In this case, we can go back and add a bit of darker tone to the area of shadow. Therefore, when it comes to graphite drawing, rendering is really a process of erasing and adding graphite, working back and forth until we arrive at a gradation of value or tone that's acceptable for the subject that we're drawing. So even though when it comes to rendering, the lighter values are typically addressed first, rendering is often a combination of different application techniques. Here we've erased out areas. We've also used circling to create some of the graphite gradations, and then we've blended applications using a blending stump to smooth these transitions of tone and value. Because rendering is a combination of adding graphite and removing graphite from the surface, a variety of interesting textures can be created, unlike what we would see in blending alone or even circling alone. If you enjoyed this video, I just want to let you know there's so much more to discover over at thevirtualinstructor.com. We have a ton of lessons on drawing and painting, which are all broken down into easy to understand videos and lessons. In fact, today I'd like to invite you to take a look at 3 of our course modules for free. You can check out 3 of our course videos and the ebooks that correspond with them. Just click on the link in the upper right-hand corner to learn more about that. As always, I wish you all the very best in your artistic success. Thank you so much for watching.